has. These are just our colors.
That's cool. It looks like fabric softener spilled on top of the washer.
It does.
It's not messed up, yeah.
Okay, so recap really quickly. So last week we went over how to read card forms and their abbreviations, the different types of purchase agreements, how all of the contracts are stacked, and then we reviewed the first 3 pages of the RPA, one section at a time. Do you guys have any questions about these things? Because what I'm going to go over this week, or what I'm going over right now, is like all of the extra little forms that you might need to add to an offer. So you guys do need to know what I'm talking. I'll show you. I have little picture references, but if you guys are not comfortable with the RPA, now would be the time to tell me. Good? Go. Yeah, nah. I will send you, I'll give you my notes. So like I literally printed out the first 3 pages of the RPA, and I handed it out to everybody, and then they all wrote notes on it, and I just went based off of mine, so I'll give you a copy of mine.
Do the same thing for this 10?
Huh? This I got to download and save, and so I'm gonna just share this with you guys. Okay. Okay, this week what we're gonna go over, and I'm gonna go over them kind of quickly, so because we don't have a lot of time, but we're gonna go over counter offers, FHA docs, the seller's license to remain in possession, adding someone to a contract, the contingency of a sale of the buyer's property, and then tenant occupied properties if there's more than 2 buyers on a contract, and then entity buyers. Okay, so the first one is counter offers. There is the SCO, the SMCO, and the BCO. You'll notice here that the seller counter offer, SCO is the seller counter offer. It is intended to change terms in a single offer from a buyer. So if they have one offer that they want to counter, they're going to use an SCO, or a seller counter offer. If an SMCO is a seller multiple counter offer, and it's intended to change terms in multiple offers for multiple different buyers. They are supposed to have one SMCO and send the same thing to everybody. I'm just telling you what they're supposed to do, okay? But that's how that goes. They've received multiple offers on a property. They like some of the terms on one, some of the terms on the other, and they want it to be all narrowed down into one. So they're supposed to write an SMCO, seller multiple, that lets you know that lets the buyer know that there are multiple offers, and and this is going to all of them, and it's kind of like whoever signs it first gets their offer accepted. Okay? And then there is a BCO, which is the buyer counter offer, and it is intended to change the terms of an SCO or an SMCO. Just like the seller has the right to change some of the offers, they kind of tweak some of the things on their counter offers, the buyers also have that right to ask to change certain terms. This would, sometimes like sellers are like, they'll say like, hey, like we don't want to, I think Deanna had this issue or this situation where like the seller didn't want to pay closing costs, and they countered her saying that they don't want to pay closing costs. So she, on her buyer counter offer, upped the sales price and asked for the closing costs again. So that's the scenario that that's a good scenario or use of it. Any questions? This is what a seller counter offer looks like. I didn't put all 3 because the seller counter offer and the seller multiple counter offer look generally the same. For the most part, there's a couple of differences, but it's nothing like huge to note. So here's where they would put their terms, where it says other terms. And so this is where they would change whatever they wanted to change. Here, these addendum. So if they wanted to add other things, like if they have to sell their house, or if they have, let's see, it's kind of hard for me to see. If this is a backup offer, or they're adding an addendum, or there's a tenant, it's tenant occupied, they would mark one of these boxes and attach it to this counter offer so that you see everything all up front. And then if you, as the agent, if your buyer wants to submit a counter offer, a buyer counter offer, they would check this box, and it says attached to the subject buyer counter offer number 1, because it's numbered. And then, so that meaning that they're going to sign it, and they're also attaching a buyer counter offer. Any questions? I know it's a lot of little boxes, a lot of little things. Any questions? No? Good? Cool. The next thing, the FHA docs. I don't know why agents think that when this says something is attached, that it's optional. It's not. If you are submitting an offer with an FHA loan, you mark this box, it says the FVAC/HID is attached. If it's not attached, your offer is incomplete. So find it, pull it up. These are the abbreviations, FVAC/HID. These are the two forms that you need to attach to your offer if your client is purchasing a property with an FHA loan. Okay? So the FHA mandatory clause, which is the FVAC, is that the buyer, what this means, I'm going to pull the form up, but what the form means, next, thank you. What this form means is that the buyer is not legally obligated by any kind of penalty of losing their deposit to purchase a property for whatever price you put right here. Now if it's previously negotiated that, hey, like the buyer's going to pay over appraised value or something like that, then that supersedes this. But this form is for the lender, and it lets them know, it says it in this first line, it is expressly agreed that notwithstanding any other provisions of this contract, the purchaser shall not be obligated to complete the purchase of the property described herein or to incur any penalty by forfeiture of their earnest money deposit, meaning their EMD, or otherwise unless the purchaser has been given in accordance with the HUD, FHA, or VA requirements. I'm lost. Written statement of the federal, okay, whatever. The lender setting forth the appraised value of the property not less than this. So they are not legally required to pay anything more or less than that unless otherwise agreed upon. And if they agree to drop the price, they agree to raise the price, if they're paying over appraised value in any way, shape, or form, it says that they must sign a new FHA mandatory clause, the buyer and the seller, and they must agree to it.
So that form, you're gonna give it to the lender?
Yes. This is generally mainly for the lenders. They need this. It's a disclosure. It's basically covering them, saying, hey, like we let you know you don't have to pay whatever you're offering. You don't have to pay more or less than that. You can cancel based off of appraised value. That's them covering themselves. And so they need that. They need it for their file. If they don't have it immediately, like once they open escrow, it could delay their close of escrow because it needs to go in. It needs to be seen by the underwriter. So this is generally mainly for the lender. But on the offer, like I was stating, if it says here it's attached on your offer just between you and the listing agent, if I was a listing agent and you told me this is an FHA loan and you mark this box and it says the forms are attached and they're not attached, your offer is not complete. You have an incomplete offer because I'm sitting here waiting for that FHA mandatory clause. Okay. The HID is the form is called for your protection, get a home inspection, and it is required for FHA transactions. Now, a common misconception about this is it says required for FHA transactions right here at the top. This doesn't mean that a home inspection is required when you get an FHA, when you buy a home with an FHA transaction. This form is required. This lets you know the importance of a home inspection, why you should get one, to be informed. It tells you like everything you need to know how to find an inspector. It explains the difference of an appraisal and a home inspection, but that doesn't mean that it's required legally for them to buy one. They pay that out of their pocket. So if they want to save themselves like $500, then they don't have to do it. And what I like to tell people is that's fine if you don't want to. I'm going to make you sign a waiver. And then they're like, oh no, I don't want to sign a waiver. That's weird. And then all of a sudden they have $500 to buy it. But that's generally a lot of people. That's a really big misconception. A lot of people would tell them like this is required. It says it right here. No, this form is required for FHA transactions, not the home inspection itself. Okay, so that's another thing. This form is required for FHA transactions. So if you're submitting an offer with a FHA loan and you don't submit and you don't have this with your offer, it's incomplete and you're not doing your job because it is required to have this form filled out.
When you're sending the offer?
It says it right here, attached. It says both of those forms are attached, the FVAC and the HID.
Now, when you click on that, it doesn't automatically
No, not in Glide.
Not
No,
anymore?
not in Glide. So just go pull them up. And like I said last week, if you guys yeah, it's not hard. But like I said last week, I know the forms are a lot to track and a lot to keep track of. I always just started learning the abbreviations. You can look up forms by their abbreviations. Yeah. You don't have to know that's a mouthful. For your protection, get a home inspection required for FHA. I'm not typing that in there. I type in HID. That's what the abbreviation it says right there.
Over the-
HID. Go over the what?
Are you gonna go over the home inspection waiver form?
Yes. Okay. So next week.
Okay.
Next week. I'll go over that with you guys really quick.
For that FHA form, the seller has to sign it too, or it's just?
Yes, it says, yeah. So here it says so when you create your offer, when you send it out for signatures, obviously it's just you and your buyer signing it. So that's why when you send it over to the listing agent, there's a sign here for the seller and the listing agent to sign it. All parties sign it, which is why it's supposed to be attached to the offer. It should be accepted at the time of acceptance, and that's why your offer isn't complete if you guys don't have it. Things happen. I know that sometimes like we forget, or something happens, or like we don't get a new FHA. Like the price gets negotiated, and then you need a new FHA mandatory clause, and you can get that later. But generally speaking, keep everything correct and how you're supposed to do it. This needs to get submitted with your offers to the listing agent. I know you.
FHA offer in a long time.
The second page.
Oh, yeah.
HID?
Yeah.
Was that one always included?
Yep.
Or was it just the mandatory? It was always?
Mm-hmm. Always included. I think it used to say, because the RPA gets updated, or like all of our firms get updated every like June or July, and then in December. And I think it used to say like FHA bundle is attached. It used to be a bundle. Yeah. But now it's like stipulate which one's which. Because like,
Why they did it that way?
what, the bundle?
Like why they separated now? Preference problem.
I have no idea, to be honest. I think just for like clarification purposes, because a bundle isn't like a car form. It means they're bundled together, so you can pull them up at once instead of having to add them both at the same time.
Yeah.
But a bundle isn't a car form. That's not. So I think they just named it for clarifications. Okay. What if the seller needs time to move? So if the seller needs time to move, because generally, once we close, the seller needs to be out at the time, like we went over last week, the time of recording. So once once you have recording confirmation, the seller needs to be out. But if they need time, you have two options. You can give them time to stay for less than 29 days. So if it's 29 days or less, you can use the form SIP. And then there's the RLAS, which is the residential lease after sale, and it's used when the seller needs to stay for 30 days or more. Generally, I've only ever done one RLAS because they needed like 3 months to stay. It's a lot more paperwork. You usually always use the SIP, but it's really depending on whatever the seller needs.
For SIP, can you do a rent back on that one? Or
Yes, so I'll show you the form next. Let me see. So like, I know a lot of the times you guys will get like a counter offer or something that says like seller to remain in possession for 3 days or something like that. Yes, that's acceptable, but it's not enough. Like, yes, that you guys obviously sign it, but you also still need this form. That's not enough. The SIP goes over if there's going to be any rents paid, the exact date and time they need to get out, if they're paying for like solar or electricity, if that's even an option. Sometimes they stay at no cost to them. But if they're renting back for like a couple of weeks, this is where you would stipulate. Just saying, hey, they could stay for 3 days after the close of escrow is not enough. It leaves too much up in the air and too much to argue about. So this is why this form is needed. It tells you here that the seller can stay for either I put 6, but so many calendar days, or if you check this box, you give them an exact date until 6 p.m., or you can make it sooner, later, whatever works for you. And the seller has no right to remain in possession beyond this term and may be responsible for court-awarded damages if the seller does remain. So they'd have to like get evicted at that point. Okay?
If you get this sign and they go past the date, can you call a cost and be like, hey,
Yeah,
they need to get out?
yeah,
And this isn't efficient enough to be like, hey,
Will they get squatter rights?
out of it?
yes. They do get, yeah, and it would turn into like a, yeah.
That's if you don't have this, right? Or even if you have
Even
this.
if you have this, yeah, they get
No
squatter rights,
way.
yeah. That's California. Yeah.
Sucks. Call me, I know.
But
guys.
this form
I know a couple.
is to protect us. We did our job.
I know.
No, yeah, so this form here is, yes, it's going to stipulate everything for the buyer and seller. Yes, they have to sign it. But this form, all of our car forms are to protect us as agents. Every single form that we have, every single additional page you have to put was a lawsuit at one point or another. So this is to protect us. We did our jobs. We let them know, hey, you're only going to stay for 6 days or you need to be out. We let them know he signed it. He said, and then that alleviates you of any legal troubles.
And so you as the agent, you should check a day ahead.
Absolutely.
Their stuff's out already.
Yep.
For next day.
You should. I mean, you don't have to go there, but yes, call your client and be like, hey, are you out? How are things going? You know, make sure they're moving along. Any other questions?
If they leave before that date, the 6 days, it's fine.
They just let you know. Yeah, they just can let you know.
Yeah, sometimes they just put extra days. Just to give time.
That happens a lot. Yeah, that happens a lot. Like my listing on Eve, my seller, he's a farm worker. He gets home at 6:30. We closed abruptly. I had been bugging, like, when are we closing so I could tell him when to get out? And then they just like, recording confirmation, and I was like, wonderful. And I have to call him, and he was like, well, can I stay? Like, I'm off at 6. Like, I can't move everything, and so, like, he's gonna be out tomorrow. And I'm like, all right. And I was literally, before we got on, I got off my ops meeting training early, just so I could call him and be like, tomorrow I'm gonna be at your house at 1:30 for the keys. And he's like, yeah, that's fine. I'm like, all right. Don't make me look bad. He was like, no, it's fine. So, good. Any other questions on the SAP? Nope? Okay, next. Okay, adding a buyer to the sale or to the contract. Okay, so this is called the assignment of agreement. We used to just do it on an amendment or an addendum. Hey, so-and-so to be added to the contract, so-and-so, or though it usually happens when like a buyer's wife wants to get added to just the loan or the title, I'm sorry, or if like they're having trouble qualifying and they need to have a co-signer brought on in the middle of escrow. This is when you would have to add a buyer to the contract. It used to just, like I said, it used to be able to be done on an addendum or an amendment, but escrow is now requiring this form. It's called the assignment of agreement amendment. Just a regular amendment is not going to suffice. AOA. The AOA. This is what it looks like. You'll notice here it's that you have to stipulate what kind of assignment it is. So you could do a partial assignment, meaning you're adding a buyer. You can do a total assignment. And I think, honestly, in my opinion, I think this was made because of wholesalers. Because it says here's a total assignment. You can assign it, like take yourself off and then give it to somebody else. They're assigning it. Or another assignment, meaning you can remove a buyer or like you have to remove something from the contract. So this is the form that needs to be done if you're removing a buyer, adding a buyer, or giving the property away. Here, the only reason why I mentioned wholesalers is because there's a section here that says the consideration for assignment, it tells you that by default it says that the buyer is not receiving any money, but Section B, if it's checked off, that means like somebody removed themselves from the contract and they're going to make X amount of dollars right here for assigning it to a new buyer. That's so.
Should that be completed before, like, that's when you're making an offer, when you're...
This is only when you're already in escrow. So so if you're already in escrow, and I think I didn't have it. It's the paragraph, the reference is page 2, letter K. You have 17 days, just like you have 17 days to do your inspections, your appraisal. You have 17 days to request an assignment to the seller, and this is the form you would give it. So you have those first 2 weeks of escrow. Like if you're having issues with your loan, you need to add somebody. You have those same 17 days to deliver one of these to the seller. And you could, as you notice right here, they have the right to not accept it and then blow the whole deal up. So like if you come in on day 21 and be like, I need to add somebody, and they're pissed that you just wasted their time, they can literally say no.
Is that form only to add somebody?
Add somebody, remove somebody, or assign it completely, meaning like, hey, I'm not going to be the buyer and assign it to, like, let's say I was in escrow for this property and I was like, you know what, I don't want it anymore, but Jose's going to take it off my hands. I'm going to assign it to Jose.
Okay, I have a contract to ask you about, but I'll let you.
Okay.
So that would be annoying, but just adding like a buyer, like say you just like last minute, that shouldn't blow up a deal, right?
No, it
Just
shouldn't.
like
It's
a long
only
title,
like and it's always a case by case scenario. Like, because what happens generally, like I've seen it happen where like we've been asking like, hey, do we have loan approval? We've been asking for a week, and then they're like, and then the lender comes out of nowhere and says, oh, we need to add the wife, and so a seller, I've seen a seller say no, but they usually don't, but they do have the right. So try to get that done within the first 17 days. If you need to add somebody, I always ask, like, hey, like, are you the only one on the loan? Okay, are you married? Is your spouse gonna want to be on title with you? Like, because even if they want to go on title, they still have to fill this out, And it says right here on number 2, prior documents. We have to deliver to that buyer that you're adding all of the prior documents, and they have to sign them all over again. So you guys don't have to do that, but your TC is going to have a freaking field day with you.
So if we're just adding one, we just hit partial?
Yes. If you're adding one, you hit partial. You're going to put their name right here on the assignee's name. And then if they're in a trust, you would mark the section on E. But yes, you would add their name here where it says assignee's names. And it says here that they've been delivered all of the prior documents, or that they will be delivered, not yet delivered, and that they will get it done and they will sign everything again.
Now, when doing that, since there's only 2 lines for buyers, you just put them below, or like if you have 3 buyers?
Oh, I'll go over that one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's my favorite form. I'm just kidding. I hate that form. But okay. Any more questions on this? Yes.
Does the seller, if you choose to assign it, does the seller see the assignment?
Yes, they do.
They have to sign
The
it?
seller has to sign this form. It says right here.
But it doesn't show the assignment fee though.
It does right here.
Yeah, it has it on the bottom.
Whatever you want. You choose your assignment fee. That's what wholesalers do. So they go and they put themselves in escrow, and then they assign it to somebody else for a big amount, and it tells you right there. Yeah, that's how wholesalers get paid. All right, you guys, ready? Okay, what if the buyer needs to sell a home before they buy? If that's the case, on page 2, L9, can you guys see that? Yeah. This is the box you will check for the car form COP. It is the contingency for the sale of the buyer's property. So it's an additional contingency. So in addition to all of these, it's an additional contingency, still 17 days, that's added to the RPA to stipulate that the buyers must first sell their current home to buy this one. And so the way I've explained it to buyers is I call it if and only if. So all of these terms on the contract apply if and only if you can sell your house. And this is what it looks like, okay? So you'll notice here it says the buyer's property contingency is contingent upon, by default, it says the buyer entering into contract for the sale of and closing escrow on. So by default, it says they have to enter into escrow and close. I don't know why you would mark any other box, or especially letter B, it says only entering, because if it doesn't close, you're still obligated to fulfill what you've put on the RPA. Or letter C says only the close of escrow, and you would mark this box if the buyer's property is already in escrow. Does everybody get that? Okay. Entering into contract. So if letter A applies, entering into contract, the buyer will have 17 days, just like everything else, to get their property in contract. Or if by earlier, they need to let the seller know. Sorry, it's really small on my end. If the property is listed on the MLS, here's where you would fill out who they're listed with, and they shall do it within 3 days by default. Or if it's not already listed, I'm sorry, by default they will mark this box and they have 3 days to get it up on the MLS if it's not listed yet. And they still have to stipulate who they're listing it with. Because sometimes these people are out of town. I've had that, where I had to do a contingent sale, but they were from San Jose, so I had to give them the listing agent's phone number out there. Any questions?
And then if it's already in escrow, you put the escrow number and stuff like
If it's already in escrow, you would mark C, and then you would put the escrow number and who your escrow's with, and when the date is supposed to close. Okay. Okay, this part I love to go over. Backup offers and the seller's right to cancel or require them to remove contingencies. So because this is a contingency, once you've fulfilled that, once it's been gotten into escrow or once it's closed, that's a contingency removal that your buyer needs to send to the seller. So hey, I'm removing the contingency for entering into escrow, and then they sign another one. I'm removing the contingency to close my escrow, and it's usually 2 days, a few days before you guys close. but the seller does have rights to market or like receive backup offers by default. So if by default, so if they go into escrow, they take your offer, they go into escrow, and then they get a backup offer that isn't contingent, better terms or something that they want to take, they have the right to serve you with a notice to perform, which gives you 2 days to remove, gives you an additional 2 days to sign a contingency removal and send it over, locking your buyer into purchasing the house. Or they can cancel and they're going to go with the other offer, the other better offer that they just received. You can mark the delayed right to notify buyers, so it asks for 17 days, like, hey, you can't take any backup offers within the first 17 days, let me get my house sold. Or you can mark no right to notify buyer, meaning that contingency is out the way. They cannot take backup offers. I've tried to sneak that in there, it gets counted out every single time, literally every single time. They'll take, most of the time I've used this one, number 2, C2, or the delayed right. I'm like, hey, like, don't take any backup offers for the first 17 days. If we don't get the house in escrow in the first 17 days, by all means, take your backup offers. But usually people will be cool about it. But this one is this is immediate. Like, you can open escrow tomorrow, and by default, you can open escrow tomorrow. If they get a better backup offer, the seller can be like, remove contingencies, promise you're going to buy this house, or I'm going to take this one. And you have to perform or cancel. So.
C2, you know it says 17 days, or can you put longer?
Yeah, you can, if it gives you this option and there's a blank, you can put whatever you want there. You could shorten it, you can lengthen it, you could put 30 days if you want to. But I always just do 17 because you have 17 days to get the house into escrow anyways. So I always just click that one because it just gives them a little bit more time and a peace of mind to the buyer. Because do they read the RPA? No. Do they read these little extra forms? Yes, out of nowhere. Like, you didn't ask me any questions, but now you want to know about a backup offer situation? Okay. So these are the ones that I always pay attention to because I'm like, the seller right to cancel. They can cancel by first, again, sending a notice to perform, and I'll go over notice to performs next week. And if you fail, to perform, then they'll cancel on you. Do you guys have any questions? Nope. Okay, the only other one is time for performance of contract obligations. So by default, it says that once their offer is accepted, once the buyer's offer is accepted, they have the time frame like we saw here, that start from the day of acceptance. If you mark this little box right here, those time frames don't start until their house is in escrow. That also always gets counted out, but you could try. But it's nice to know that you guys have those options where you can ask. So like you can ask like, hey, like give us 17 days to get, like, so it's an additional contingency. Give us 17 days to get the house into escrow, and then all of our time periods, the rest of these will start. Meaning they don't have to order an appraisal, even submit an EMD. Nothing. If they agreed after checking this box, if the seller signs and agrees to it. Any questions? Nope. Okay, properties with tenants. Okay, it's called the Tenant Occupied Property Addendum. It's on page 2. The majority of this is on page 2. It's M3, and it says this form is used to stipulate what the buyer wants done with the tenants currently residing on the property. So you can ask them to vacate. You could say you want to keep them. You could do a bunch of stuff. So this is the Tenant Occupied Property Addendum. By default, it says the tenants can stay. It says it right here on letter A. Or property to be delivered vacant. And you can add, if it's multiple units, you'll notice right here it says that it's for occupied for 1 to 4 unit properties. So like you can ask for unit B to be delivered vacant, or all of the units, or just 2 of the 4 if it's a fourplex or a triplex. You can ask specifically for some of them. Generally that happens is if you're buying the property with an FHA loan, you have to live on the property if you're buying at home with an FHA loan. So at least one of them has to be vacant so that you can move into it. Any questions?
I have a question.
Go.
It has to be vacant when the FHA client moves in, but there is a 30-day or 60-day grace period where the lender could say, they aren't moving in. They are going to move in, but it's going to take 60 days where they can go ahead and take possession of the
Yeah, so
property,
you
right?
do have to take possession of the property within, I think it's 30 days. You have to, with an FHA loan, within 30 days of closing, you have to take possession of the property. The problem with that, and I always suggest, if you're buying with FHA, ask the tenants to leave before you close. Because a lot of agents will try to be sneaky and say, oh, they were already served with the 60-day notice, so let's do our 30 days, and then after it closes, they have that extra 30 days, and you can move in 30 days. No, that's not California law. Once it changes ownership, the new owner has to serve a whole new 60-day notice, and you just gave them 90 days. Yeah. A lot of people.
Just running the risk of them not even getting out of
Yeah,
the general.
that's yeah, and then now your buyer is stuck having to evict those people if they don't want to leave, and it's their problem now. Okay, if they're gonna buy with the tenants in place, they need a copy. You want to mark. I always suggest you mark these two boxes: income and expense statements, and tenant estoppel certificates. This whole paragraph just stipulates, like, you are going to get their deposits, any deposits that the tenant has given the seller. It's going to be transferred to you in escrow. If there's anything, they are supposed to hand over all of the leases, contracts, anything that they have. A lot of them are like, oh, like, we've just been on, like, month to month, word of mouth, like, hey, like, verbally you pay this much a month. So if they say that, the tenant estoppels supersede anything. So you take the seller, you just mark this box, the seller will, they'll generate it on their forms, but it's a one-page, my name is this person, I am so-and-so, I live at this property, I've lived here since this date, this is what came included in the property, this is how much I pay, this is how much, like, I get one parking spot. It gives you everything in one little page, and they have to deliver that to you with the disclosures. It's a big thing. A lot of people, like, don't ask for it. Like, why would you not want to know all those things? When I first got into real estate, my uncle does a lot of investings. I used to work for him, investments, so it was all like units. And there was one that he took over, and one of the tenants, like, it was a fourplex, and one of the tenants in the back, he's like, everybody pays $900 and I pay $850 because I mow everybody's grass. And I was like, that was not on the estoppels. Like, no, you don't. You pay $900. And so he was like, no, I do. I pay $850. And I'm like, no, we put a stop to that real quick. We were like, no, you pay $900. That's not on the estoppels. And legally, that we had good footing for that because we did it. Because he didn't. He was just trying to get away with paying rent. More than 2 buyers on a contract. Wait a second. Does anybody have questions about this? No? Okay. More than 2 buyers on a contract. Okay, so you'll notice that, like, there are only 2 lines here. This is a snippet from the RPA. There's only 2 lines for buyers if you have, for buyer signatures. So there's this little box right here. I tried to highlight it, but it says, if more than 2 signers use additional signature addendum, CAR Form ASA. Okay? So to each their own. I've seen it where you can just have the extra buyers sign down here, somewhere along the lines, wherever you want. It's going to be up to the lender. So sometimes they're like, because I've done this, like, I went out of my way, filled this whole form out, and I'll go over the form real quick, but I filled this form out, and then the lender was like, I need the buyer to sign the actual RPA. So this is what our forms tell us to do. You're supposed to mark this box and do this, but you might have to go back and have your client, depending on the lender, the client might have to go back and sign it anyways. So I would just, if that's the case, if you know that there's more than 2 buyers on this pre-qual, I would ask them up front. Okay? Any questions so far? No. Okay. I don't like this form because there's too much, like, lines for you guys to fill out. So it says here, okay, it's going to give you the same stuff. This is a addendum to the purchase agreement. Here's the address, the day it's dated, and it says between and a bunch of lines and between a bunch of lines, and you pick a box. So it's at your leisure, because this is going to be filled out when you guys make your offers. You can put the buyers first or the sellers first. It really doesn't matter. But whichever box you choose, you physically have to type all 4. Let's say there's 4 buyers, all 4 of their names. If you click buyer, all 4 buyers' names go here, and then click seller, and seller name goes here. So there's going to be the two main people that sign here, and then the two other people who are going to be signing because they're on the loan would go, additional signer would be the buyer. You would print their name, and then they would, where it says if applicable, but not there. You would print their name right here, or they would sign right here where it says signature, and then date. This is the liquidated damages clause, and the liquidated damages and the arbitration clause. So if the first two buyers sign those two paragraphs that have the little boxes that we went over last week, I think it's paragraph 28, the ones that are like optional, but we always say that they should buy them. This is them agreeing to both of those. If the first two sellers initialed those pages, then, or the first two buyers, I'm sorry, then the buyer should initial both of these, and the second buyer should initial both of these. Does that make sense? I know it's a lot.
Basically, it's them agreeing that.
Agreeing to those two optional paragraphs, yes. Or agreeing or disagreeing. Sometimes if they don't, they don't. But it's optional, non-optional. It's optional, but you're gonna get countered anyways. So do it.
Can you hit required?
Can you hit required? I say no. If you were taught differently, then I don't want to know. But it's optional for a reason. It's something that you go over and you're supposed to advise your client on, but it's at the end of the day, it's their choice. But I'm also like car forms trained, and that's what they told me to say. Okay? Yes, you can go in there and physically click it and just make them do it, but put it in a situation like if this sale were to go to court and they're going to pull up the contract, they're going to pull up your Avid, and they're going to be like, well, you signed the liquidated damages paragraph, and they're going to tell them that was optional. And they're going to be like, oh, it wasn't optional for me. I couldn't go any further until I clicked that box. And then they're going to go back and ask you, like, did you do that? And now you're liable because you didn't explain, you didn't tell them that was optional. You made the decision for them.
How about signing the whole contract is optional?
I was gonna say, isn't like the contract like their obligation to read through?
Yeah.
Yes,
Right?
yes, that's
So
why,
we're not-
exactly. So if that's why you tell them, like, here, I sent you the contract.
You read through it.
Please read it. Let me know if you have questions. And they go through it. Usually they will. They usually just think anyways. But personally, I would not make that required. And if they have questions, then tell them. Like, hey, like, sellers are going to want you to sign this.
Right.
It's your deposit. They need some kind of leverage in case, like, I don't think you will, but in case something happens, they're going to want you to sign this. But yeah, I make it sound like it's not a choice, but it is a choice. Any questions? Nope. Okay. And I think just for shits and gigs, FHA buyers, I think there can be up to 4 buyers. So I've never done anything more than 2. So for FHA, but I mean, it could happen. I think I've seen some where like there's like a trust and there's like 6 people in the trust and they all have to sign it. That's annoying. But I've never personally dealt with anything more than 4. Still a pain. Still a pain. Because like, do I have them? You'll notice right here it says this is in for the offer, but you can click other and you could put TDS or any other form that they have to sign. So do I have them sign this like 12,000 times, or do I just have them sign along the side of all the disclosures? So it's like,
For like the trust, like you said, though, like if they had a trust, you can sign the signers, right? So would you only have to put who's in the trust once, and then they can put where I give permission for so-and-so to sign
yeah,
every form.
but that should be done before escrow. Yeah. Some of them all want to, like, I think the one that I saw where there was 6 signers, they were siblings, and they all wanted control. They were like, I'm so glad I wasn't part of that one. That sucks. So, okay, entity, buyers and sellers. This is just one I wanted to go over because I feel like nobody fills this out right, and it drives me nuts. For the seller and the buyer, it's going to look the same. If your buyer or the seller is an entity, meaning they're an LLC, they're in a trust, they're a corporation, they need to mark this box and then name their entity name. Okay, so I just put Sunflower, I don't know. Sunflower LLC, it needs to be named. And then the legally authorized signer or signers will be named here. Okay? And then you'll see right here where it says buyer's signature, the signature by, and it would be John Doe because he is the legally authorized signer, but the name of the buyer is Sunflower LLC. He's buying it in the name of it for Sunflower LLC. Sunflower LLC is the buyer. He's just their legally authorized buyer. So, and that's why that would be there. And then the printed name of the legally authorized signer would go down here. Walmart does not have a signature. Walmart cannot sign Walmart. The CEO of Walmart, whatever his name is, John Doe, signs for Walmart. That's how I explain it to people. Like it cannot, you do not sign a form as Sunflower LLC or Walmart company. Ryan doesn't sign forms as Ryan Dobbs Realty. He signs forms as Ryan Dobbs, authorized CEO of Ryan Dobbs Realty. I had to send a whole contract back like with Mark. I was like, Mark, this cannot, the TC, I was like, Mark, this cannot be like that. And he was like, oh, okay. But that is something, but if you catch it if you get an offer accepted and the seller's section is not filled out properly and they're signing as whatever, so like, what was it? It was like something investments LLC. Tell them like, this isn't right. Save yourself extra paperwork, extra headaches, additional stuff that you guys have to do to fix that, because any mistake you make has to get fixed with more paperwork. Any mistake that the listing agent makes has to be fixed with more paperwork. And it makes you look really like you know what you're talking about. Look at it, review it. Any questions? No, nothing at all? Go.
That last document, the RS.
Oh, the RSCD. So if they don't do this, you can also add a form. It's called the Representative Capacity Signature Disclosure. You fill this out when it intends to purchase. It looks just like this, literally, just like this. It's just an additional form. It used to have to be attached to the offers, but when they did a big change where they stacked it like a graph, like a table, the RPA, and all of our contracts. They did that a couple years ago. And when they did that, they incorporated it into the offer, because before it wasn't there.
So in all of these contracts, we just search them up in Glide?
Yes, you can, that's why, and I'll share this little slideshow with you. You can look them up by all of their abbreviations. The RCSD, what's this one? The TOPA, the COP, all of these you can look up in Glide and like read over them. But yes, they're all there for you guys.
So from now on, the FHA.
A mandatory clause only if the loan is FHA. If the loan is FHA, yes. It has to be included in your offer. It's a requirement for your file. We don't care when it gets in, but it should be included. It says it's attached. It's not negotiable. It doesn't say I'll attach it in 3 days. It's attached. It's an incomplete offer. I've seen agents be like, hey, you didn't send over the FHA bundle. Like, can you please send that so I can present? Like some of them won't even present. Hey, this is FHA. Can you send me the FHA mandatory clause? I've seen them respond and say that. Did it? See? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you got to go find it and fill it out. Yeah. See? Any other questions?
Is there a list of what we fill out and what Mark's able to fill out?
Okay. I'm going to go over, next week I'm going to go over disclosures. And just next week I'm going to tread lightly. You're supposed to know what these are. You're not supposed to fill them out. You're supposed to know what they do, what they're for, what they're used for. That's what your TC is for. And then next week, or the following week, so week 4, I'll go over the exact escrow process and what you should do versus what your TC should do. A good rule of thumb, legal. I'm going to tell you legally what CAR says, and then I'm going to tell you what we do. Legally, CAR forms are not supposed to be filled out by anybody other than the agent they're not supposed to go into your Glide, and if your name's at the bottom of that form, nobody's supposed to be filling it out but you. Okay? Legally. Now, can you invite somebody to the transaction? Yes. Can you tell them what to write? Yes. It's a little bit of a gray area, But in 2 weeks, I will go over what we are, how we do things and what you're supposed to do versus what Mark's supposed to do. Okay?
Yes.
Any other questions?
Is Mark, you said Mark's RTC?
Yes, Mark is the buyer's agent, the buyer side TC. He is, how long has he been with you guys?
A while.
A while, yeah, a couple of years now.
No, because he was here almost 2 years ago when I got here.
Yeah.
So he got here when I got here. He was doing listing side, that's why.
Yeah, he was he started off as an assistant to,
Yeah.
yeah, he started off as an assistant to Angela. She's the listing side TC. And like they kind of broke off. So he does the buyers and she does the listings. I've been working that's why I'm doing this, because I've been working with him. I get his feedback, and then so I'm like, okay, there's some things that you guys aren't like aware of. Maybe it wasn't exactly expressed correctly, or like you guys don't you guys didn't get it. So this is why I'm doing this, and then with him on the back end, I've been working with him about his communication, because I've gotten I asked the agents too. I'm like, hey, how's he doing? What do you guys need from him? What is it that you guys don't know about, or like tell me? And you guys are honest, so like I've been working with him as well to like try to perfect that. And I've told him like you got to do this right. And so he's okay. Like, and tell me if he does. I've told him, I know for those of you who have been here a while, before they used to make you fill out like a form for the inspections, like a Google form. I told him don't do that anymore. Ask you, he's supposed to, like, that's for what? It's an extra step for nothing. Like, just ask them and then order it the second they answer you. So he's like, okay, like this is just how I was taught. I'm like, yeah, we're gonna throw everything out how you were taught out the window, but we're gonna do this again. But yeah, so like there's little things that we're tweaking. He's getting better. He honestly, his biggest thing that he told me is that he's afraid to bother people, and he doesn't want to piss off your clients so that they won't want to work with you guys anymore. And I'm like, that's not a problem. Don't worry about that. Bug people. That's your job. And he's like, okay.
So he just needs to let us know before he
When I
goes
open
out.
an escrow, I tell him, hey, I just opened escrow, it's this address, they're gonna want this inspection, not this one. And I just kind of give him a heads up, just be fair
Right.
with him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And we'll go over that when we go over the escrow process, what you should say. But exactly, you are. Hey, I just got an escrow. Forward him the contract. Forward him the contract as soon as possible. What I used to do when I was like actively submitting offers is when I submitted an offer, I would include my TC in the offer email. Like, this is my TC. Please make sure he's like, should this offer get accepted, please make sure like he's included in everything, so that like he can't say I never got it or they got it to me a week later.
And then the listing agent does the opening email to like.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, yeah, some of them don't listen, but at least if that's the case, you were like, hey, I opened escrow. Did you get it? At least he's not like, who's the listing agent? I don't know. He could be, he's like, oh, wait, I already got an email. I can ask him, hey, include me. He can take the initiative and do that himself. So that's a good practice to get into. But yeah, it's just Mark at Ryan Dobbs' team. He's in the Philippines. He's in WhatsApp. So you guys can like go look him up in the team chat and introduce yourselves if you want to. But yeah, he's just a little shy. And he's afraid to bother you guys or your clients. And I told him, don't ever worry about bothering the listing agent. Bug the crap out of the listing agent. But I'm like, just, send daily reminders. It's okay. Okay? And he's going to be on you guys more about your avids. Because I'm like, why the hell do we not have avids? And he's like, oh, what ask? I'm like, no, you need to ask 5 times a day. I don't care if they get mad at you. They can get mad at you. And he's like, okay. All right? Any other questions? Yes.
If we miss any document and the listing agent doesn't ask for it, will it get like caught on during the
It should. Yes, it should. It's supposed to. But these are the forms. Generally, these are the forms you guys are supposed to fill out. Absolutely fill out 100%. Even if you miss it, these are the forms. Like he's not, unless he goes through like some vigorous training, he's not going to know what to do with the COP or like the contingency of the sale of the buyer's property, unless you sit on FaceTime with him or on Zoom or a Google Meet and tell him click this, this, and this. It's a lot.
Will brokerment always also like trigger like what he needs to, right? 'Cause all that
Glide? Oh yeah, so he will request it if he needs it. But see that like these extra forms, these aren't requirements in brokerment. So like these are like they're optional. Like he can add that as an extra like field of something that needs to get put. So that's why these are the ones you guys need to know and where to find them, because he's not gonna know. He will soon because I'm training him, but right now he doesn't know. So these are the things you guys need to know. And I want him to be a ninja where he's correcting even you guys. Like you guys, you missed the COP. I want him to do, that's how he's supposed to be. That's a great TC.
Once they have it, once it's met, once a week.
Any other questions?
To sign the contract.
As far as transaction coordinator, we can only use him, right?
Yes.
If you have another one, like you can't use like prior ones.
No.
Work here, you have no other
Hmm?
one. In work here, you have no other.
Yeah. I mean, it's included in like their split anyway. So like,
Yeah, why would you wanna place?
yeah. Why would you want to pay somebody else? Yeah.
Kind of like guys.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, like that's why when you open an escrow, like who opened it? I asked you. Like I asked Alfonso because he got his first escrow. I'm like, you tell me how Mark is. Let me know. I told Livingston when she opened an escrow, when she started, I'm like, please, like, I want honest feedback. I need to know. I asked Teresa before. I've asked Liz before. Like, I want to know because I need to know. I have a one-on-one with him on Friday so that we could talk about these things. And I was just on a Zoom call or like on a Google Meet call with him this morning, and I'm like, where is Esmeralda's Avid? He's like, I don't know. I'm like, I wonder why. So. And I was like, did you ask her? And he's like, I'll ask her right now. I'm like, okay, ask her. So, no, not just you, but you were just the first person I remembered. Like, I was like, there was a few of them in there, but you're the first person I remembered because I was like, where is it? I think I asked him about it last week too. That's why I was like, where is it? He's like, I'll ask. I'm like, should have asked her 10 times already. Ask her. But yeah, I think he's just really like nervous about bugging the crap out of you guys. And I'm like, if they're mean to you, I'll be mean to them. You better bug them. And he's like, okay. He just laughs, but he thinks I'm funny. I don't know why. All right, that's it. If you guys, is there any more questions? No? Okay, because it's 11, so you guys need to hop into calls. You guys usually, I'm gonna stop.